Hello and welcome to this series of videos on thematic teaching and language learning. In this first video, we're going to analyze why thematic units, what they are, and also make a connection between thematic teaching and language learning. The first thing I want you to do is to just stop the video in the next slide and think how the components of the illustration match your concept of what a thematic unit is. Just think for about a minute, but first stop the video now. This illustration highlights the main tenets of why thematic teaching is a useful way of teaching any subject, not just English. So let's start by trying to define thematic units. What is a thematic unit? According to Hayek, it is a way to unify lessons, to provide continuity between lessons and activities through a theme or topic. In general, to choose the theme or topic, and we're going to see how to do that during this series of videos, usually we start with an open-ended concept, right? Something like, I don't know, social movements. Or unessential questions. How have social movements contributed to the establishment of democracy, for example? Or a big idea, which could in itself be the social movements. Why do we look at a theme as a unifying way? Well, because it affords us a way of connecting relevant content for learners. And that's the first thing you need to know. Thematic teaching is a way of content-based instruction, is one of the forms that content-based instruction takes. And as many things in our profession, we can oscillate between two ends of a continuum, from transmission-centered thematic teaching to transactional thematic teaching. If I were to give an assessment, most of the understandings of thematic units in English language teaching focus on a transmission approach. That is to say, you take a topic and you do listening, speaking, reading, and writing activities around the topic. So that is what we call a theme of thematic units. However, we can move to giving students more autonomy slowly, right? We can create a series of meaningful teacher-directed but not teacher-centered activities on a topic. So that is to say, students do something with the topic. And the key word here is do. To taking a topic and then involving the students in exploring subtopics that they choose within that topic. You see that moves towards more transactional, and that is called, those two are called theme explorations, until something very, very student-centered and transactional, which are theme cycles, where the teacher and the students together determine topics and questions to pursue. Ideally, the open thematic units that you have in your curriculum, in the curriculum of secondary schools, should become transactional. Why does it matter to teach thematically? I'm going to pause the video again for a minute and give you time to think. So let's explore the reasons for using thematic units. I'm sure that you have already guessed most of them, but just in case, here are a few ideas. First and foremost, because they engage the students with the content being taught. And remember, content is meaning, and meaning drives language acquisition. First meaning, then form. More importantly, working with content means that content becomes input. And that input that is accessed through, so the learners doing things with the input, is most likely to be acquired. So another consequence of or reason for using thematic units is that they allow learners to apply the content, not just receive it, but also apply it throughout the curriculum. They are able to make connections between concepts and language, and they are able to make form meaning connections, which are the ones that build the linguistic system. In this, of course, they're going to draw from past experiences and their prior knowledge. And what you will see developing very clearly is vocabulary and comprehension skills. However, for vocabulary and comprehension skills to develop, they need to be explicitly taught, as we have discussed. Because we use a wide range of materials, we can actually make sure that we are targeting the students' or the learner's developmental level. There will be, throughout the thematic unit, something that every student will be able to do and access. In the process of negotiating these meanings about a topic, language skills are reinforced because of the length of time that we spend in one theme, and also the repetition of words and skills. The focus of a thematic unit, though, is not on the product, but on the process, even though it will have a final product, something that students will have to do using what they have learned through the unit to make a product. And last but not least, the learner is given an opportunity to be actively involved in learning, but at their own pace. I'm sure you have already thought of all these advantages, but just wanted to clarify them a little bit further. Creating thematic units is not easy. A good thematic unit has certain key components, which are the ones that appear in the illustration at the beginning of this video. Namely, those conditions or requirements are the absence of threat. That means students need to be able to relate their background knowledge and their evolving, emerging understanding of the topic with the teaching, so that they can actually find meaning in the content, so that they can make choices. Choices are going to be linguistic choices, choices of topic, choices of activities to do. And for this, we need adequate time. In general, we say a good thematic unit lasts in secondary schools for about a month, right? Because students will be accessing so many materials and sources of input throughout a thematic unit. We are enriching the environment, and that means giving the students enough input so that they can become motivated through the topic and the tasks to actually start collaborating. And in that collaboration, what they're going to be doing is trying to construct expressions through the language. The content is the vehicle through which the language will slowly emerge. For that, of course, we need the immediate feedback of the teacher, and particularly if you're using tasks, giving the students the chance to plan how they're going to do the report, and giving them awareness-raising activities and practice activities after they have presented the results of their group work or collaboration. That is the kind of feedback that students will need in order to be able to pick up the language. All this hopefully will lead to what we call mastery. That is to say, the ability of the students to apply what they have learned in the unit to any other content and any other communicative situation that they encounter using the second language. One obvious advantage of thematic units, which is not frequently cited, is the fact that themes or topics allow us to organize teaching in different ways. So, considering the different kinds of teaching scenarios that we have in schools in Uruguay at primary level, secondary level, or higher education level, thematic units provide a flexible way of organizing what we have to teach so that it results in students learning. And in the same way that we go from the transmission approach to the transactional approach, we can look at different kinds of thematic units. One of them is the theme-based unit, right? That is basically what most teachers do. There's a big idea, you create learning outcomes. Those outcomes give you inklings into themes that have sub-themes. Then you plan a sequence of lessons with transitions between them, create activities and tasks. And of course, there is a culminating task where students show that they have learned what you have decided to teach them through the unit, or you could do an integrated performance assessment test, which is something that you have seen in the course or will see in the course very soon. These theme-based units work wonderfully for teaching language when we are just concentrating in the English class. However, if we are working as we're expected to work with other teachers in the school, then we need to think about a cross-curricular units. Cross-curricular means that you are going to be looking at disciplinary connections. So if you integrate maths with science, English, and geography, students will be learning math, science, English, and geography in all the subjects. You will take one theme and integrate everything. The sequence is more or less the same, but notice that after the themes have been created, we have disciplinary connections. An example of a cross-curricular unit could be when the teachers of science, biology, chemistry, and physics collaborate with the English teacher, and they all develop the topic connections. And when we talk about connections, we can create the themes, like, for example, electricity for physics, chemical bonds for chemistry, and with particular emphasis on neurotransmitters, and we talk about the central nervous system in biology. Meanwhile, in English, we teach how to describe the central nervous system using vocabulary from the other curricular disciplines, and also talking, for example, about synapses in English. Students are looking at content to be learned. In the process, the language emerges. So from the disciplinary connections, we go to activities and tasks, and again, a culminating task, an integrated performance assessment. The last kind of thematic units is what we call an English for specific purposes unit, and that is something that could be useful if you're working with technical and vocational education, because the English that we teach for technical and vocational education is completely different from the English we teach for general purposes. So basically, this is very task-based. It looks at what students will need to do in a workshop, for example, a car workshop, or if they are in food technology in the laboratory. And there, what you do is integrate the process, for example, of safety. Let's take the topic safety. And you have students who are doing biotechnology, food studies. You have other students who are doing preparing for the garment industry. So you look at, for example, safety in each of the workplaces. As you can see, thematic units are very, very flexible in allowing us to incorporate things. And I would say that theme-based units tend to be more popular in secondary teaching, cross-curricular units in primary teaching, and English for specific purposes units in technical and vocational. They tend to be, it doesn't mean that they tend to be more frequent there. Now, how are we going to learn how to do thematic units? Because as you can see, this is not easy. We're going to learn to do thematic units using a very specific approach, which is research-based. It follows the work of Frederick Stoller or William Grabe, and is called the 6 T's approach to thematic teaching. Basically, the 6 T's have to do with theme, text, topics, threads, tasks, and transitions. Theme, text, and topics are going to provide the content. Threads, tasks, and transitions are going to provide the opportunities for students to apply the content and learn through that. So in our next video, we are going to go through this approach in detail. Hope you have found this video useful. And just to recap, in this video, we have looked at what thematic teaching is, why it is important, or an important element for language teaching, and how you can vary the thematic units that you create according to, for example, the students' learning needs or the subsystem in which they study.